Okay, I'm going to guide you through connecting to the game on Fantasy Grounds. You need to download Fantasy Grounds Unity and run it. The first time you do that, you can register for a free account on their system, and the free or demo account will let you connect to the game because I've got a pro account. So download everything, launch Fantasy Grounds. The first time you run it, you'll see there'll be a red box around check for updates here. So click there to do the check for updates. You'll need to do that to pull across the latest version. Once it'll go away, it'll download a bunch of stuff. Once it's done that, you can click Join Campaign. So Join Campaign, it shows you a list of everybody who's running a Fantasy Grounds game at the moment. Scroll down and you should see Howell Phillips Falcondale somewhere. That's me. You'll only see it when I'm actually running the game on my computer, so it's not necessarily going to be there 100% of the time, but I'll make sure I send it to you and I keep the game running so that you get a chance to connect in practice. So click on it and click Start. So it's going to go away. It's going to try and connect to my machine. It'll complain that you need a password. Then it'll twiddle its thumbs, it'll quickly connect. The next thing it's going to do is acquire a file list. So that's pulling from my machine the files that it needs, things like a copy of the player's handbook, a copy of various maps and things. This might take quite a while the first time you do it. The second time you do it, it'll just look, has anything changed in that file, and so it should connect quicker. Then it'll sit and twiddle its thumbs with the Fantasy Ground icon. Nobody knows what it's doing at this point. It's thinking very hard. Thinking. Have we connected? Not quite yet. Thinking. There we go. So up pop a few windows, confusingly. The first thing to do is with this campaign setup window, you just need to check that you've got Player's Handbook loaded in. So if you click on Next and then Modules, you'll see a list of things that you can load up, and make sure in particular that the Player's Handbook is loaded, but you can load everything there. So let's just load that last one. There it is, it's loaded. So then you can close that window. You shouldn't have to do that every time, but the first time you connect, it needs to know which modules you want to load. Okay, close that. The next thing you'll see is a character selection window. So there's some characters here we can play. I'm going to grab hold of Elisandra, and there is Elisandra. So let's grab her character sheet and move it out of the way just up here. And let me take you through the elements of the Fantasy Grounds update interface. So here is your character portrait. If you have closed your character sheet, you can click on yourself to bring it back up, which is a neat little trick. This is the chat window, so you can say things to the Dungeon Master can say things to you. It's not all that useful when there's not very many players, but it's quite useful to keep track of what's going on when there's 6 of you connected. I think it takes up a bit too much of the screen real estate, especially if you are running on a laptop. So the first thing I would do is to right-click on it. That brings up a context-sensitive menu. Left-click on Unlock Position, and now you can resize this window. So I usually find that making it shorter and squatter and bringing it down to the bottom here is a better use of screen real estate, especially on a laptop, as I said. Then you can relock the position so you're not always dragging it around. So let's go through some of the other buttons here. Down here are dice, so if you click on a d20, it'll roll a d20 that only you can see. If you drag and drop it onto the chat window, it'll roll a dice that everybody, specifically me, the GM, can see. So that pops up in my window saying that Elisandra has rolled 17 on a d20. If you want to do a roll with advantage, you click Add before you roll. It'll roll 2d20 and take the best. So it's going to say it's rolled 13, that was the best of the 2 things we rolled. So if you ever want to just roll random dice, you can do it down here. Over on this side, there are some other important windows, and in fact I would say you should probably have 2 of them open all the time. The first is this traffic lights. That's the safety toolkit. That's for safe words. Again, one-on-one, it's not such a big deal. I'll be checking with you that you're okay to proceed, but if we have more than one player connecting, then it's very useful to be able to signal that to the GM. So there are 3 cards that you can choose to signal your happiness to proceed. The red X card is a red safe word. Things have gone too far. We need to either rewind or revise or skip past this content completely. If you click one of these cards, it pops up in my GM's window, so I can see that somebody has red carded, and I will then acknowledge that on my window, and we will deal with it. You'll see that the safety card toolkit X has been acknowledged by the GM, has popped up in the window. So red card if something's already gone too far. Yellow card if you think it might be heading towards something that you'd rather not see, and green card if you're okay to connect. And you can see it'll keep a track here of how many players are connected, so I might ask for a vote if there's more than one of you. Okay, who's cool to proceed with this scene, or should we fade to black? I'll ask for a show of green cards. The next important button up here is the combat tracker up here. So if you click on that up there, it pops up another window. I think the best place for that is over here, sitting above the chat window. This combat tracker shows you your character, anyone else in the party, the bad guys. It'll give you a summary of your hit points. It'll give you your initiative. It'll tell you if you're under effect. Like this one is showing that she's unconscious. So obviously I did a test fight before. So if I just go over as the GM, I can take off that status effect. So I'm going to delete her unconscious, and it's magically disappeared from your screen. It also shows bad guys. So here Alessandra is locked in a battle that she's going to lose, probably with an adult blue dragon. That's not the greatest. So put the combat tracker above here. It's very useful. You'll see, for example, that the adult blue dragon is entirely healthy. Of course it is. Wow, scary. So other stuff around here, these are not particularly useful, but the notes is useful. You can make yourself notes on the session. The way Fantasy Grounds works, it always shows you a window with a list of things. So you can select a pre-existing thing if there were any. But down at the bottom, there's this little edit list button. So if you click on this little edit list button, that would allow you to delete anything that's in here, but it also gives you a plus button for adding an item. So here I've added an item. Let's call it Alessandra's notes. I can see a dragon. Oh my god, I'm going to die. So that saves for you your little notes. You can see, you can bring it back up, you can keep editing it, and you can keep your notes that way if you like to. Maps, normally what happens with maps is I'll pop a map up on your window for you. So I will say, as the GM, I'll go off and I will pop up a combat map. Then I'll drag it across to the chat window. So a little button will appear here. If you click on that, it'll bring up the footprints in the forest map, and we can't see anything on it at the moment because there's no tokens on it and we haven't got visibility. So if I just drag and drop my character, there I am. Now I can see things, and if I drag and drop the dragon, there it is. Oh, panic. So you can see there is fog of war on here. You can't necessarily see everywhere and everything. It's an outdoor map, so I could see most of it. But some things might be blocked from your line of sight, so there's something could be hiding here that you couldn't see. So I normally find a good place to put the map that you're moving things around is here next to the next to the combat tracker. So you can see here, I can move myself on the map, 3, 4, 5 to run away from the dragon, and so on. Okay. This little button here that I just clicked zooms to fit, which is quite useful. If you need to scroll on the map, you can make a little cross here to show me what you want to do. You can erase that, erase my little cross, etc. Okay, let's have a look at the character sheet. It's a pretty straightforward, self-explanatory thing. So here's your character portrait, class and level there. Here are your statistics. If you ever need to roll a statistic roll, you'll see whenever there's one of these little d20s, that's something you can click on. So if you double click on that, it'll make a strength check. You'll see it's popped up in the window down here, and that reports to the GM that you've done that roll, and that's what you've got on the thing. There are saving throws here. So again, if I say make a wisdom save, you double check, click on that. It'll roll, add your statistic, tell me what you've got. Skills, the same for skills. So all the standard D&D skills are here. So if you're going to try to persuade the dragon not to eat you, I'll say make a persuasion roll. You come across, you find the box with the little D20 in it. That shows it's a rollable thing to click. You've rolled 21, which might just mean that the dragon's not going to eat you. Hooray! Abilities, if you want to see what any of your abilities do, click on this little red button. That always brings up a description of the thing. So you can see the usual description if you've forgotten what any of these things do. But generally speaking, more useful is to look at it on the Actions tab, which we'll get to in a minute. Inventory just shows you what you've got. So this character's got a pair of magic boots. Again, clicking the little token pops up a window so we can see exactly what that does. Oops, notes, if you want to add things like personality traits, you can do them there. If you want to do notes about sessions, I think it's better to bring up a note in the note window there. If you want to have a look at a map that I've popped up previously and you're planning about, you can always bring up the maps window. There's a whole great list of things, and then there's a list of stuff that you can see in the player's handbook. So you'll be able to find the maps and things in there. Story, if I've shared handouts, they'll appear in here. NPCs, this is useful, for example, if you are a druid and you want to see what the stats of a giant eagle are, you can just click on that and bring it up. Items are definitions of what various sorts of magic and mundane items do. So you can always look stuff up as we're going along. Assets down here you probably won't need. That's for finding pretty pictures for your tokens and things. And library, in case you ever wanted to go through and consult something in the player's handbook, that's got a list. For example, if you wanted to look at classes, if you wanted to look at the rules for paladins, you can go to the class, click on it, and it's got the player's handbook stuff about the class, so you can see what you'll get when you next level up and so on. The most critical bit of the character sheet usually is actually the Actions tab. That's what you use in combat. Now you'll see why I've given this character sheet quite a bit of space over at this side. I can drag it over so that I can see most of my available actions. So how do the actions work? Well, the simplest ones are up here. As you might expect, this box lets you attack the dragon with your greatsword. So let's do that. Let's say it's my go. I'll get the GM to move it so that it's my go. There we go. So it's my go. Hooray, me. If you need to move the map around, you can do that. It's a bit of a funny interface that. You grab hold of this little button and use it to scroll. Otherwise, you zoom in and out with the middle mouse button. Less than obvious, that, I think. So grab hold of your token. You can move yourself So let's move up to the dragon. Foolish Alessandra. Now, what we can do, we could just roll an attack, but Fantasy Grounds is actually capable of keeping track of a lot of stuff for us. So it is of considerable advantage to tell Fantasy Grounds what we're attacking before we attack it. And the simplest way to do that is to control-click on the thing we're going to attack. So I'm targeting, this pops up, you can tell when you've done it because it'll pop up in the combat tracker. It says target adult blue dragon. So now if I roll my greatsword attack over here, so I go to the button and click it, it'll roll an attack, and not only does it pop up for the GM that I've rolled 29, it also says it knows that that has hit the blue dragon. And now that we've hit the blue dragon, if I double click on the box, it'll roll the damage for me, and it's applied it to the dragon, and you can see that the dragon is now wounded. So that is very useful. It applies to all sorts of things. So if I want to heal myself, I can do that too by targeting myself and clicking cure. If I wanted to do Searing Smite on the dragon, I could do that too. How does Searing Smite work? Well, it's a spell that you cast. A lot of these things, if you want to do them, there's this little magnifying glass next to them. Click on that. That opens up all the details of what this spell does. So to cast it on the dragon, I've still got the dragon targeted, so I can cast that. I can do some extra damage. So there you go. And it's done that damage to the dragon. And it knows that he needs to make a con save at the end of every turn. So it keeps track of a lot of stuff for us, which is kind of handy. So that's the basic overview. More will come up as we play. But knowing those basic things, knowing where all your actions are, knowing how to do your skill rolls, and laying out the window like this. As I say, I find combat tracker, chat window, map in the middle, character sheet. You might want them the other way around potentially, but that seems like a pretty good layout for showing you what's going on. And that is how to get into and play the Fantasy Grounds game. I look forward to seeing you and playing with you in the game very shortly.